Good afternoon once again, everyone. I'm going to start the webinar. So everyone's here for the webinar. So my name is Patrick Siemek from SolidCAD Solutions. I am a technical consultant on the BIM AEC team. And today I'm going to be showing a webinar with the CTC software tools, the Revit Express tools from the BIM Batch Suite. So let's get going. And I'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar. So in the meantime, I'll just be demoing and mentioning the different tools that we're working with. So the solution we have here is the plotter and exporter. So what the plotter and exporter will do, it configures plots and exports using native Revit settings, select precise views for exporting, specify naming conventions for each file type, save the settings for repeat exports in the future, and also you can schedule the exports for unintended exports and also sheets. So let's jump right into the demo already. So from here, I already have a Revit project open. And if we look to my project browser on the right, many sheets that we have already created based off of different views and then sheets made from those. So what I'm going to do is going to be opening the tool, the BIM Batch Suite Plotter Exporter, which we can find here at the top. Once that is opening, it may take a couple seconds for it to load as it is getting the parameters from the different instances and types from our different views. So once we have that loaded, here is our displaying screen. We have our different views on the left, and we also have our different export settings. So what we are able to do, you can drag and drop different views from one section to another. But what I'm going to be doing in this demo is going to be showing how we can search for specific views that we can automatically place into those export settings. And where we create those is a wildcard search. So here at the top, going into my wildcard search library, already some preset wildcard searches have been created. But instead of showing you already with ones that are created, how do we create a new one? So I'm going to add a new wildcard search. So selecting the add portion here. And from this option, we are able to search based off of different parameters for views and sheets to specify what we are exactly looking for. So a lot more detail that we could filter out for specifics in our Revit projects. So let me give a wildcard description. So starting from here, I will give the SolidCAD new option. So what I'm going to be looking for here are going to be my sheets that are underneath the new construction and architectural discipline. So at the top, just selecting the wildcard description. We have also, do we search for sheets or views? In my case, going to be doing the sheets portion. Once we start coming down to our bottom, we now have different filters. So again, with these filters, we are able down to filter for what sheets we are exactly looking for. So by selecting one of our filters to open, once I click the drop down, as you can see, many different types of filters that are specified for the sheets. So we're going to start with our sheet discipline, and we can start adding filters equaling to anything that is underneath has the sheet discipline called architecture. There is a case sensitive option here at the bottom. As you can see in the list, possibly I wrote down architecture in uppercase or in lowercase, so you can turn on and off a case sensitive option. We could also continue on filtering more sheet properties. So again, I'm going to go down into here. So since I wanted the architectural sheets underneath the new construction phase, I'm going to add the sheet phase parameter. And once again, having an equals portion to anything new. Once we have that all set up, prior to hitting OK, we do have a test portion to see exactly what these filters have done and what you have selected. So once we select test, it will then give you a dialog box showing you all the different types of sheets that you have just selected using the parameters, and you have a list of those showing up from here. So again, many different parameters that you could use to filter out exactly for the views or sheets that you're looking for inside of your projects. Once we have all those options selected and ready to go, I'm going to select the OK button. And now we have a new wildcard search found here at the bottom. With our wildcard searches, to the right, we have our export options. Simply to add a wildcard search with my new sheets, I will simply just drag and drop to my PDF writer. And you will see now the PDF has now been enabled with my new wildcard search. With your PDF options here, to the right, we could specify some settings. So jumping into my PDF settings, and here you use your native Revit settings to specify your print options. So at the very top, selecting a printer name. If you click the drop down, you'll see your different PDF writers. But in this case, with the BIM Batch Suite, you will get a CTC PDF writer. Your print settings. So again, those native Revit settings that you have for your page setup, you have a list of options here. So again, we can select from the drop down over here. Your export. So where do we want to export our files to? So again, you would want to browse to where you want your files to be stored. So again, I have a PDF folder here, and we're having that sent to that location. With now those settings set, you create a subfolder based off of your export. So when you create a subfolder, you could have it set by the date or date and time. In my case, I'm just going to have the date that I'm exporting my files to. Beneath here, we could see again Revit native options. Do you want to combine the sheets all into one single file, or do you want to create separate files from there? I'm going to create it as a multiple selection here. Moving our way down, how do we want the naming convention of our export to come out? So again, we have our different parameters here on the left side, and also some preset or some selected ones on the right. You're able to mix and match or change the different types of parameters that you want. With your now naming convention set up based on the parameters that we have on the right, you do have a preview option right at the bottom. With that preview option, again, you could adjust what is needed. You're able to move up and down the different parameter options, and you will see that the preview also starts to change. Once we have that all set up as our settings, we're gonna click OK here at the bottom, having our settings already preset. Still, not only can we just export one type of file, we could export multiple types. I already have a wildcard search here of DWG drawings, which inside of there, it's looking for an exact DWG list based off of views. So if I open that list, here we can already see different types of filters used. If I click the test option, it will automatically find all those views or sheets if needed based off of the filters that were set. With those selected, once again, I could drag and drop my options to the location as needed. And like before with the PDF settings, we also have our DWG settings. So again, opening my DWG options, very similar to what we saw before. To what folder do you want to export your files to? So right at the top. With that folder, when it creates a subfolder, how do you want to name it? Do you want it by date? Do you want it by time? Or you could use both at the same time. Just like your PDF settings for what page you want to create your settings to, you have your native Revit DWG settings available for you to use inside of this area. Once we get here to the bottom, again, it's the naming convention based off the different parameters that you're creating your exports for. Since my DWG drawings are views, I have the views tabs here at the top selected, different parameters that I am able to create and use as a naming convention. So again, view parameters, and on the right side, the ones that were selected for my naming convention. Like the PDF settings, right at the bottom, you have your preview. So when it exports your DWG files, how will they be named? Also, you have the native Revit options, export views on sheets and links as external references, so those will be there. And also there is a delete PCP files. So those extra files that no one really opens, you are able to have those deleted automatically within this export setting. So with that said, gonna click OK, back into our view. And when ready, we have the option to save. our settings. So from here, I'm going to save my settings and driving it to my folder, and I could name it webinar. So saving those settings, so again, I could reuse these over and over for my project. Having those ones saved, save is complete. And when ready, we could use the run now option. Instead of having it run now and seeing just a bar load, I've already created the PDFs and also the DWGs. So how they get exported is inside of the folders that I've selected, we could see our export options. I had the DWG and PDF. Double click in the PDF, there is my subfolder based off of just the date setting I had. And inside of there, the PDF file. And once again, that naming convention that I set up when I was creating those settings. With the DWG files, if I jump into that folder, the ones that were exported, again, we have the date stamp on the subfolder that I wanted to create. And inside of this folder, we can see all the different files. I specify, so again, we see many DWG files. I specify to have the references as separate DWG files, which, as you can see, we have many different types from the plan itself and the X references coming from behind it. So as you can see from this tool, we are able to easily have multiple options and properties to create search options for our sheets, for our views, to have them ready for exporting. Once those are all completed, from time to time, you don't always want to repeat this process and do it again. You are able now to have a scheduler. So without even being at the computer, you could have a scheduler which would open up your projects and export the files when needed. So let's create a scheduler. Clicking the scheduler option, and we could create a task list, creating a new one. From here, what is the schedule task name? Webinar, solid, CAD, export. From here, once we have the naming convention already selected, we now have an option. When do we want to run these exports? At one time, we could do a daily option, weekly, or monthly. So what we could do is at the end of the day on Friday, if we don't want to come into the office early and have our views or sheets exported to our different file formats, I could have this set up to a weekly option that on Sunday, it will print out. So come in Monday, it's already exported to where I want it to be. So again, we could have scheduled times for exporting those specific properties we had prior. Underneath here, we need to specify now the configuration. So which settings do we want to have? The ones I just previously set for the PDF settings with my new architectural sheets being printed, and also the DWG settings. I'm gonna add that saved file that I put into the document. Coming into here, we could browse. It's already browsed into that folder. So I'm selecting that webinar export settings option and bringing it into my system. With that selected, going to click OK at the bottom. And from here, we need to add now to what files are we going to be assigning this export setting to. So we need to know what Revit project it's going to be opening. So with that selected, I'm going to add some files. And from here, you drive yourself in the browse option to where your files are located. And as you can see inside of that Revit or inside of the folder, I have already many different types of projects here available for me to use. From this area, you are able to select multiple files. Again, they can be different versions of Revit, 2017, 2018, 2019. So with those options selected, we could bring them into our settings. So again, in this case, I have the 3 Revit files. And with those previous settings, these 3 separate files will have that exporting scheduler assigned to them. Clicking OK here at the bottom. Now, as we could see, here we could run or have the properties. So as my webinar export is assigned to these 3 separate Revit files, then proceeding on a weekly basis, on Sunday, you will have those specific export settings being sent out. So what Revit will do when you are exporting. So I'm just going to click here at the bottom. Here is my time task log. So again, every Sunday, it will be exporting from those 3 separate Revit files. Even though they are different Revit files, all you need to really do is have your machine on and logged in, and Revit will automatically, even if the program is closed, open itself open the project, export the files as needed, and close. So you don't even have to be at the desktop yourself to make sure that it is exporting the files. All you need to do is, again, just have your computer on and logged into, and it will automatically do the task for you. Also, it will do the different versions. It will open up your 2017 versions with the 2017 project files, 2018, 2019, and so on. So it already knows which files that you want to create for which version of Revit. Once completed, you will get a dialog saying what has happened. You do have different options. You do have different options that can be set. So when you do run your properties, here you will now have a save log file, show the log when done. You can also have an email sent to you when the options have been finished. And also just opening the PDF once we have everything created. So once again, what we could see here is we could easily create our different view sets or sheet sets with our filtering or wildcard search options based off different parameters. With those parameters, you are able to bring those sets over to your export options, PDF, DWG, Navisworks, any type of exported file that comes out of Revit. With those options, setting up our different settings that are available for us to use. You can also organize. So right here we have the solid CAD new. I could bring in an existing option into the PDF and also a demo option here. So you could also organize in which order are you going to have your print sets exporting to your documents. So again, as you can see with this tool, we could easily create our different sets, create our different exporting options with their different settings and running those, but also having it scheduled so we don't have to be there around the computers for the exports to happen. So that was the BIM plotter and exporter. So the next issues that people are having is Revit does not have a means to export families. However, it dumps everything into a single file directory. Many have requested for a more efficient way of saving, better sorting, filtering, and exporting. The solution to this will be the family exporter. With this, we could have a good search dialog box, pre-export grouping and filtering options, prefix, suffix options, options when exporting, invalid character management, overwriting, and backup management. So let's get into the demo of this tool. Back into my Revit project. So back into my Revit project, again in the BIM Batch Suite, here we can see we have the family exporter. As you can see, family exporter, this is actually a free CTC tool. So if you download the tools themselves, you'll have a 14-day trial for all the tools, but with the free tools, they'll stay there forever. So again, opening up the family exporter option. Again, with this option here, starting from the top, it's looking inside of our project and for our different families. So you can start typing in your different options here at the top and this. So once you search into the field, it will actually search throughout your whole dialog inside of your project to see anything that is named door. You could be more specific. And again, you'll see it starts filtering out those options. Underneath, we have a group by. What happens here is Revit has different types of families. So if I select the category options, as you can see here, the list of different categories inside of Revit will be displayed. Your different doors, door tags. So again, native Revit file formatting, as we can see here. You can start opening different categories. And with this, start selecting which ones you want to export to your local drive. So different types can be added here. There is a category option and also geometry. Once geometry is selected, here we have now annotation categories versus model categories. So again, those could be assigned and just grouped and searched in a different manner. So again, category versus geometry. Towards the bottom, we now have where do you want to export these families to. So again, driving yourself onto your local drive, which I already have here set up. Again, browse option to the right. Underneath, we have prefix and suffix. So when you export these families, do you want a prefix to the family name or do you want a suffix option too? So those options can be added within those fields. Underneath here, create subfolder named by. What this does is when this tool dumps out the Revit families, it actually organizes it in a certain manner. Within Revit, if you were just export all the families, it just brings it as in one whole directory. So with this option, there are different types. You could have subfolders just by the category, category and geometry, geometry, or geometry and category. And again, this will be based off of kind of similar to the tools that you see up here. So the tool I'm going to use is by start with geometry and then by the category. So again, with all these different tools that we have here, prior to exporting, we have a couple more different options at the top. And some of the options that we could use here. So the replace invalid characters in family name with space. So your Windows computers don't like dots in the naming convention or backslashes. So what this tool will do is actually change those icons, or sorry, those characters with spaces so that the Windows files can read easily. You have the overwrite existing families files, any backup files, you could have them deleted. And once exported, you will also again have a log mentioning what has been done. So again, with all these families here, if you have multiple selected, we have a number list here at the bottom showing you how many will be exported. In the demo, not going to be exporting all of them. So what we're going to have is showing you inside of my folder already the families. I base my exporting option by first what is the geometry and then by category. So as you can see, what's the geometry? Is it an annotation or model? Inside of that folder, we can now see the different categories. So balusters, casework. So the type of exporting allows you to create those subfolders and have at least a structured value of your families inside of your documents, as opposed to one large directory with everything loaded into one option there. So we have that here. So next issue. So once everything is exported, how do we load everything? There is no batch loading families into multiple projects. Solution for this is a family loader. Allows loading or reloading one or more families into one or more project files. So let's go into the demo. Inside of our Revit project, once again, where the BIM Batch Suite tools are at the top, underneath Family Exporter, we have Family Loader. So again, Family Exporter and Family Loader are free tools. So I'm going to click Family Loader. And from here, within our dialog box. So the first thing is, how do I load in multiple families into different projects instead of going one by one and a manual process? From here, we can start selecting which projects do we want to add to our loading process. Again, here we could select our options and I can search for files. And once again, having your list of different Revit models available for you to select and have your families loaded. So I could choose a few of these options here, add them to my selection. And again, you can browse through different files throughout your system. Once the projects are selected, clicking OK at the bottom, we now need to select what families do we want to load into the project. So once again at the top, we now have an Add Families option. Selecting Add Families, and similar to selecting the models, we need to look for where we have our families. Right now, even with families selected, you have an option, search in the subfolder. So if you just select a whole directory, you are able to click search in a subfolder and it'll actually drive itself into those subfolders and show you any existing family within those folders. Same thing would work for your project files. So once again, we have a list of many different families here loaded from that folder that we could start and selecting which ones we want to load in each project. And if I click all of them here, we can select all of those options at once. So again, selecting the projects first. Now we're out here into selecting the family files that we want to load into those projects. Once we have those already preset, we have it here in this dialog box. Prior to selecting load families, we need to specify some options. Here at the bottom, we have a couple different options. Only reload families that already exist in each host file. So this is good to keep the latest and up-to-date families per project. So again, it's just going to load in the families from this large list that exist already into that project file. It will not add anything that is not already existing. Then there is load all families into all host files. This is great for when creating template files. So you want to load all the families in at once to the template files, even if there is anything existing there. So that would take all of these families and load it right into that template file or into the project file if you would like. Coming down here to the bottom, you can use work shared files. You could even use just standalone files. So when loading in families, it will create a new local. So it would open up a project, create a new local, and load in those families as needed. Towards the bottom, you have your, again, native Revit settings. So when you have the override existing to version or override existing version as parameters, those options can be selected here at the bottom too. To the right, how do we want to save out these families? So you do have an option. Do you want to automatically save host files after loading those files? With that option, do we create a backup of anything that's loaded in, and then that existing one would be a backup file? When a work sharing file is being opened and then loaded with new families, do you want to sync the work shared file and then relinquish all the elements? So again, great for using when you have your work sharing files. And also, if you have any file families that are open, it will close the open host files. So we have those options here. So with that, as you can see, we could select multiple projects within our system. With those projects already selected, any family that we would like to load in. With that, it automatically will open up the individual projects and load in the families based off of all the settings that you have. A couple important a couple important things to know about that loading family loader. Some cases you may notice that not all files show up as processed. This happens because a family was already in the project and the family being loaded was no different than the one already in the project. Also, it may have been skipped because the family was saved in a version of Revit that cannot be read by the current version of Revit. So again, you cannot have a 2019 Revit family being loaded into a 2017. So that's when it will just give you a skipped process option there. So moving on to the next tool, and this would be the final one, the issues. Revit does not have a means to upgrade files. It's a very manual process. So what are we looking for? We're looking for upgrading an entire project directory or all active projects on a new release. Many people have requested for more efficient upgrading options as automatic audits and rebuild as central files. Solution would be the project and family upgrader. So here again, you have a directory search within your whole system as needed. You could save your new upgraded files to new locations. Link management, so if there are any links within the project files, they also can be saved to new locations and also upgraded if needed. Options when exporting, you could ignore backups, audit, and suppress warnings. So now back to our demo. So from here, what you would actually want to do is the version of Revit you want to upgrade your projects or families to, you'd like to have that version of Revit open. So here I have a Revit 2020 version. Along with that, you would want a very empty file to be used because Revit uses a lot of memory. So we want to keep it as lean as we want when upgrading our files. So from here, going back to our CTC tools, CTC software, BIM Batch Suite, and we have our project and family upgrader. So selecting project and family upgrader, and we have our dialog box. So starting with projects, Here we can start looking for the different projects that we have available for us in our system. So here we have a search directory, looking for the different Revit models and selecting OK. Once you have those selected models directory, it will give you a list of different models, showing you the naming convention, the version, and also, is it a work sharing file or not work shared file? So again, good items and details that is providing you to see the files. With now these files available for your use, you are selecting which files you would like to upgrade. So selecting the files that are going to be upgraded to our new version of Revit and coming down here for our new options. To the left, we're going to start. You could have a prefix, you could have a suffix. So when it saves out the file, is it going to add some kind of new naming convention to it? So I could have underscore 2020 if I'm upgrading my project files to that. On the right, copy to a new location. So you do have two options here. You could upgrade in the current location file, but in my case, I would copy to a new location. Here you create a new folder, or if there's already an existing one, and direct these upgraded files when they are completed to that folder. So inside of my Revit models, you could have that option. So we could have those going there. Maybe I could even create that. So when you are upgrading your files, here you have more options underneath. It will remake a central file. So again, when it starts upgrading, it will create a new central file to that specific location as selected in the browse option. It will create those folders based off of your project files that you are exporting to. If there are any Revit links, it will also copy all those Revit links into that folder and also set the new relatives paths to that project. So again, you could easily take the links from your project and have them automatically saved to that specific location as specified, and it will also set those relative paths to your new project. And same thing will go for your CAD links. There is the option, again, to have in the current location as needed. And underneath, when you have a work sharing file as needed, when it's saved, you could, again, native Revit options. You want the workspace to be all editable, last viewed, or specified from there. So I'm not going to be upgrading any of the projects during the demo, as it will take a little bit of a process. But with our project family upgrader here, you can now see at the top, we can also do families. So I'm just going to uncheck these here. So we do have the option to upgrade families also. Just like in the projects, very similar, we browse through where we have our families located. So I could come into my folders, look for where the families are located, select that option, including subfolders. So instead of me digging into the folder, it automatically will look inside of that main folder and drive to all those different family options. And we have, again, a large list of families. Family name, version type, the location, and on the right side, you also have the option. If there is different types within that family, do you want to make a type catalog? So again, it can automatically select that. If I choose some of my options here, just as an example. So again, just selecting a couple of the families. To the bottom, just like we had in the projects option, we can do a prefix, we can do a suffix, but there also is a search for. So when upgrading our files, we are able to search for within the project name or family name and also replace it with a new text. So maybe in this case, I will do handrail option and replace it with H-rail, just to give it a little example. Again, where do you want to copy the location to? So driving ourselves to a folder where we have our different options. So I can create a new one here and call it upgraded. It'll also create those relative subfolders based off of your families. So we're going to keep a couple of those. Maybe I'll even drive some of these. You could also, as before in the projects, upgrade in the current location, but I would suggest to always copy to a new location. And with that set, I'm going to click OK here at the bottom. Give it a couple seconds to process. So again, it will open up those families, upgrade them, and also save them to your specified placement. Once completed, we should be getting a log file showing us what has been done, what has been changed, and if there are any errors or any options in the processing. So here we go is the dialog box. So again, this dialog box will come through any of the processes that you do with the family exporter, family loader, also project and family upgrader. And this will be very similar to the one you have in the plotter and exporter option. So again, with this dialog box already showing us what has been done to our families, clicking OK, going to see exactly how it has created those families or saved them. So back into my folder where I'm going to have the families located. So if we come here, families, the upgraded ones, again, they are model families, so it's creating those relative subfolders. If you had annotations, they would be in the annotations folder. Creating the specified categories as we have, and jumping into here, now we have our new families. If I go back to my balusters, you could see that it did the search and replace. Before we had handrail, and this time I did H-rail. So with these tools, you could see you can easily create sets for different projects. So again, plotter and exporter, you could create different view sets, sheet sets, and export them in multiple different ways to your projects. With scheduling, you have your family exporter and family loader to quickly organize when you export your families to your directory and load them into specific projects as needed. And finally, you have the project and family upgrader to have your families upgraded and projects again to specific locations at once. So a lot more options that you have available for you using these tools, which is from the BIM Batch Suite. So as for those tools from the BIM Batch Suite, we're gonna be concluding now the demo. Does anyone have any questions?